Why was everyone gone, and yet she was still there? The range lay empty, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and dust. Shadows stretched across the dirt as the Texas-born girl adjusted her stance for what felt like the 100th time. Sophia Martinez, 24, barely 5'4", stood with a rifle almost as tall as she was. Her dark hair was pulled into a regulation ponytail, strands sticking to her sweat-soaked skin. The other recruits had long since finished and gone to the mess hall, but Sophia stayed, alone, silent, determined. A voice broke the quiet. "Still out here?" Sergeant Williams, his weathered face half stern, half admiring, stepped closer. He'd seen thousands of recruits cycle through, most breaking before they ever found discipline. But Sophia was different. "You've been at this since dawn," he said. Sophia lowered the Barrett MRAD, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. Her voice was steady, but it carried something underneath. A need. "Just trying to get better, Sergeant. I know I'm not as naturally gifted as the others." Williams studied her target through binoculars. Every shot clustered tight, deadly precise, at 800 meters. For most, that distance was a wall. For Sophia, it was only the beginning. "Not naturally gifted." His head shook slowly. "Martinez, I've trained snipers for 15 years. I rarely see anyone with your precision. You've got something you don't even recognize yet." But Sophia wasn't sure. Her journey here had never been about feeling special. Growing up in a small Texas town, she was the youngest of four. Miguel the quarterback, Carlos the engineer, Diego already a Marine. And then there was Sophia, quiet, overlooked, swallowed by their shadows. Her father, a veteran, had taught them all to shoot. For her brothers, it was sport. For Sophia, it was sanctuary. The moment she aligned her eye with a scope, the chaos of home disappeared. No yelling, no pressure, no noise. Just her heartbeat and the stillness between breaths. So when she told her family she'd joined the army, they laughed, doubted, worried. Her mother cried. Miguel smirked. "Maybe you should try the Air Force, less dangerous, more suited to someone like you." Someone like you. The words lodged deep, a wound that never closed, too small, too quiet, too feminine. She carried those doubts through every obstacle, every mile in boots too heavy for her frame, and still, she never quit. Now in advanced sniper training, Sophia had clawed her way into the ranks of candidates who looked, spoke, and moved like they belonged. Ex-college athletes, combat-tested soldiers, military academy prodigies. She was none of those things. She was just Sophia. Yet here she was, hitting marks that silenced even the most confident peers. Williams's voice cut into her thoughts. "Tomorrow you'll have visitors, not just anyone. Captain Blake Morrison and his team, elite. They don't miss. They don't fail. If they see potential, they'll pull candidates for their unit. Maybe you." Sophia's pulse quickened. She'd heard the rumors, missions whispered about but never confirmed. Shots taken at distances no one else dared. Operations buried in classified reports. It was the kind of opportunity that defined lives, or ended them. "I'll be ready, Sergeant," she said, her voice even. "I know you will," he answered, but then his eyes hardened. "Some of them won't see what I see. They'll test you harder than anyone else. You prepared for that?" Sophia nodded. She had been preparing for that her whole life. As the sun sank into a blaze of orange and pink, she packed her rifle with care, the motion steady, ritualistic. Tomorrow she'd stand before men who didn't believe women belonged at the table. Tomorrow she'd be weighed, measured, judged. She passed a group of trainees whispering as she walked back to barracks. "Morrison's team never picks women," one said. "They don't think females can handle the dangerous missions," another added. Sophia didn't look at them. She didn't need to. Their voices only fueled the fire inside her. Tomorrow she would show them. Tomorrow she would prove the quiet girl from Texas could outshoot them all. The morning broke gray and cold. Mist curled low across the training grounds like smoke from a battlefield long past. Sophia awoke before her alarm, nerves already buzzing. She hadn't slept. All night she replayed scenarios, wind speeds, bullet drops, mental calculations until her mind ached. By 600 she was geared, uniform pressed, rifle immaculate. The Barrett MRAD, her lifeline, her extension, rested against her shoulder like an old friend. Others gathered at the range. Faces tight, conversations hushed. Everyone knew this wasn't a routine test. Today decided futures. At precisely 700, 3 vehicles pulled up, tires crunching gravel. Figures stepped out with quiet assurance, men who had seen real war. They didn't need medals or swagger. The way they moved said everything. At the front, Captain Blake Morrison, tall, lean, with eyes like sharpened steel. He scanned the recruits like a hawk scans prey. Sophia felt his gaze slice right through her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison's voice carried without effort, firm but measured. "We're here to evaluate precision, patience, performance under pressure most of you have never known. This isn't for everyone." His eyes swept the line, stopping briefly on Sophia, a flicker of something unreadable. He continued. "Today's evaluation will run through multiple distances. We'll start at 1,000 meters and stretch the limits of your rifles, and your limits too. Only those with exceptional skill and composure will move forward." Staff Sergeant Chen called names. Martinez, Sophia, position 3. Her heartbeat pounded, but her breathing slowed, methodical. She took her spot, ignoring the skeptical glances from candidates on either side. She had seen those looks before. They always stung, but they never stopped her. "First target 1,000 meters, Morrison announced. "Wind 8 knots northwest, 1 shot." One by one, rifles cracked across the range. Some missed wide, others clipped near. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment. Her father's voice whispered from memory, "Still your breath. The shot lives in silence." She opened her eyes. The world narrowed to her, the crosshairs, the distant speck of a target. She factored the wind, temperature, humidity, the 1,000 invisible hands that pulled on every bullet. She breathed out, slow, finger gentle on the trigger. The MRAD roared. The echo rolled across hills. Her scope told the truth, dead center. "Martinez, center mass, perfect shot," came the spotter's call. Morrison's nod was subtle, but it was there. The others fired, some near, none perfect. Then came the next distance, 1,500, more failures, more frustration. Sophia, another perfect hit. Surprise flickered in voices now. Even the spotter betrayed it. "Interesting," Sergeant Rodriguez muttered to Morrison. "Too early," Morrison said flatly. "Anyone can get lucky twice. Let's see under pressure." 2,000 meters. The line thinned. 4 eliminated, only 8 remained. Sophia's turn first. All eyes on her, the woman, the doubt, the quiet anomaly. She adjusted, recalculated. Wind had shifted southeast, 10 knots. Her mind ran numbers like second nature, but her heart beat steady, anchored by years of proving herself. The shot cracked, echoing like thunder across the range. Martinez, inner ring, high-quality shot. Admiration slipped into the spotter's voice. Morrison scribbled a note, his expression unreadable. Other candidates faltered. Misses mounted. Anxiety hung heavy. Sophia didn't gloat, she didn't celebrate. She just breathed, already preparing for the next call. "Next distance, 2,500. Morrison's tone carried weight. "This is extreme range. Most soldiers never shoot this far in their lives. Use the equipment, calculate everything. This is where we separate exceptional from the rest." Sophia's pulse quickened, but with it came something else, a strange calm. She remembered nights buried in ballistic manuals, running equations on scraps of paper when the world slept. She had been waiting for this test long before she knew it existed. The others whispered, muttered, second-guessed. Sophia listened to the wind, watched dust shift, grass bend. Machines gave her numbers, but her instincts guided her corrections. Her father's lessons, the scars of doubt from her brothers, the whispered ridicule from peers, it all distilled into this. She squeezed the trigger. For long seconds the world held its breath. Then, Martinez direct hit, center mass, exceptional shot. A murmur rippled across the range. Even Morrison's eyebrow lifted. Something in his eyes had shifted. Sophia didn't smile. She didn't break her rhythm. She simply cleaned her chamber, prepared for what came next, because this wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This was the moment she had carried with her since the backyard in Texas. And it was only the beginning. What happens when the target is so far away, it looks like dust on the horizon. The range fell quiet as Morrison's words cut through the tension. Final test, 3,000 meters, beyond the effective range for most rifles, beyond the limits for most shooters. Very few in the world have ever done this under field conditions. A silence followed, heavy and expectant. 3 candidates remained. Jackson, the Marine with combat tour behind him. Thompson, the Army Ranger champion shooter. And Sophia, the girl they had almost dismissed before she ever touched the line. The spotters set up additional sensors, advanced computers, environmental meters. It looked more like a laboratory than a range now. Staff Sergeant Chen explained every variable, every challenge. Bullet drop measured in feet, wind drift that could move around by yards, even the rotation of the Earth itself bending the trajectory. At that distance, 4 seconds separated the trigger pull from the impact. 4 seconds where anything could happen, gusts of wind, temperature shifts, invisible changes in the air. 4 seconds where math met faith. Jackson went first. He carried himself like a man who had seen death and lived to tell it. His movements were confident, deliberate. He ran calculations, checked and rechecked. His finger found the trigger and the Barrett thundered. The bullet sailed into the void, seconds stretching thin as silk. "Miss 3 feet left," the spotter reported. Jackson's jaw tightened. Combat had taught him how to shoot under fire, but even he bowed his head. Next came Thompson, a competitor's precision in every motion. He adjusted, recalculated, breathed with surgical control. The report of the rifle echoed. "Miss 2 feet low, 1 foot right, so close and yet complete failure." Thompson's shoulders sagged. He had lived his life in competitions where inches meant victory. Here, inches meant defeat. And then Sophia. The murmurs grew. Some whispered it wasn't fair, that the little Texan had already been lucky enough. Others leaned forward, knowing they were about to see something different. She was the last chance for a miracle. Sophia lay prone, pressing her cheek against the stock. The rifle felt alive, an extension of her heartbeat. She remembered being 12 years old, lying on dry Texas grass behind her father's hunting rifle. He had crouched beside her, pointing out how dust swirled in the wind, how blades of grass leaned, how heat shimmer bent the air. "The world speaks, Sophia. The shot depends on whether you listen." Now 2,000 miles and a lifetime away, she listened. The wind gusted at 15 knots south-southwest. The clouds shifted, pulling temperature and pressure with them. Humidity rose. A dust devil twisted in the distance like a taunt. She waited, patient, calm, letting it pass. Her fingers never trembled. Her breathing never rushed. She calculated, adjusted, then calculated again. She trusted the computer, but she trusted herself more. Morrison watched her through his scope. In all his years, he had never seen a recruit move like this, not with arrogance, but with a stillness that seemed almost reverent. As if the rifle, the shooter, and the target were bound by something invisible. "Take your time, Martinez," Morrison said quietly. "At this distance, patience matters more than speed." She didn't answer. She was already gone, already locked in that silence where no doubts lived, where only the shot mattered. Her breathing slowed to nothing. The trigger broke clean. The rifle roared. And then silence. 4 seconds stretched into eternity. 4 seconds where Sophia's past flooded back. Her brothers laughing, telling her she wasn't built for this. Her mother's worried eyes. Nights of drills in the rain, her small frame collapsing, only to rise again. Every dismissal, every taunt, every shadow she had ever lived under. She kept her eye to the scope, refusing to blink. Martinez direct hit, dead center, perfect shot. Repeat direct hit, dead center at 3,000 meters. The radio crackled, but for a long moment no one moved. The range seemed frozen. Even the wind felt like it had paused to bear witness. Then, as if awakening, the whispers grew. A murmur rippled through the candidates, then through the elite team itself. Jackson shook his head slowly, disbelief painted across his features. Thompson exhaled with something that was quite defeat. It was respect. Morrison lowered his scope. For the first time that day, his mask of calm cracked. He looked at Sophia, not with doubt, not with skepticism, but with wonder. "In 20 years of service," he said, voice carrying across the range, "I've never seen a shot like that." Sophia didn't smile. She didn't soak in the praise. She simply cleared her chamber, methodically cleaning her rifle, because perfection wasn't an ending. It was a standard, and standards had to be met again and again. Rodriguez muttered to Chen. She read variables others didn't even see. Chen nodded, eyes still on Sophia, and she had no hesitation, no fear, just certainty. Morrison approached her directly. "That was extraordinary, but our work isn't just about one shot. We demand more than accuracy, independence, decision-making, adaptability. You prepared for that?" "Yes, sir," she replied, voice firm, no hesitation. His gaze lingered. Then, with the faintest trace of a smile, he said, "Report tomorrow, Building 7, 0600, your real training begins." That night Sophia lay awake in her bunk. The barracks were dark, filled with the soft snores of exhausted recruits, but for her, sleep never came. She replayed the shot, not with pride but with reflection. What would it mean to be chosen? To step into missions no one would ever hear about? To shoulder responsibility that could shift the balance of wars? She thought of her mother praying for her safety. She thought of her brothers still doubting. She thought of her father who would understand, who would know that his little girl's silence had never meant weakness. It had meant listening. And she thought of tomorrow, Building 7, Morrison's unit, a world where doubt would follow her like a shadow and where she would need to fight, not with words but with precision, with presence, with the quiet power of someone who didn't need to be loud to be heard. Sleep never came, but dawn did. And with it a new chapter. Why would a single door feel heavier than any battlefield? At 600 sharp, Sophia stood before the steel entrance of Building 7. The air outside was cold enough to bite, but sweat already beaded at her neck. She had faced impossible targets, distances that broke seasoned marksmen. But this, stepping into Morrison's world, felt different. This wasn't just about shooting anymore. This was about survival in a place where talent alone meant nothing. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet tension. The candidates who had survived the first evaluations waited, each carrying the weight of uncertainty. No one spoke. The silence wasn't just discipline, it was fear disguised as composure. The door swung open. Morrison entered, flanked by Rodriguez and Chen. His presence was immediate, commanding without raising his voice. He didn't need to. "Welcome. Some of you think yesterday was the test. It was. That was a filter. Today begins the real process, and most of you won't make it." No theatrics, no ceremony, just truth sharp as a blade. The next weeks blurred into a crucible. Days started before dawn with brutal physical drills, weighted runs through mud, endless push-ups until arms trembled, dragging logs across gravel until skin tore. The exercises were designed not to build muscle, but to break spirit. Morrison's philosophy was clear. Anyone can hold a rifle, but few can carry the weight of silence, secrecy, and responsibility that came with their missions. Sophia struggled. Her body wasn't built like the others. She was smaller, lighter, pushed to her breaking point faster. More than once she collapsed in the dirt, chest heaving, vision swimming. And each time voices whispered in her head, "Miguel, someone like you can't handle this. Carlos, engineering takes brains, but this, you're too fragile." Even Diego, the Marine, had doubted her. But in those moments when her body screamed to stop, she remembered something her father once said after a long hunt in the Texas heat. "The body quits first. The mind decides whether you rise. And every time she rose, shaky, slow, but unbroken. Morrison noticed. He never praised her, never gave her an easier path. If anything, he made it harder. During one weighted march, he added extra sandbags to her pack when he thought no one was watching. Rodriguez frowned, but Morrison's expression stayed stone. When Sophia staggered and fell, the captain only said, "Decide, get up or go home." She got up every time. The physical strain was only the first layer. The psychological tests were worse. In dark rooms, they were confronted with impossible choices. A hostage tied beside a target. Who do you save? A teammate injured while the mission clock ticks down. Do you carry them or complete the objective? The questions had no right answers, only reflections of character. One exercise planted Sophia in a simulated overwatch position. Through her scope, she saw two silhouettes moving, one confirmed hostile, the other uncertain. The instructors barked in her earpiece, demanding a shot. Her finger hovered over the trigger, her breath steady. But she didn't fire. She refused to gamble when a civilian life hung in the crosshairs. When the lights came up, Morrison stared at her with unreadable eyes. "You hesitated." "I decided," she answered quietly. His silence stretched, then he turned away, nothing more. That night, alone in her bunk, doubt gnawed at her. Had she failed? Had she shown weakness? But deep down she knew. Shooting wasn't just about accuracy, it was about conscience. A bullet wasn't just steel, it was consequence. And she couldn't lose sight of that, no matter what Morrison thought. The weeks dragged on. Language lessons, cultural briefings, tactical drills where silence mattered more than speed. Sophia found herself learning not just to shoot but to listen, really listen, to her teammates, to the terrain, to the unspoken rhythm of danger. Still, respect didn't come easily. Some of the men saw her as a burden, a token, a test case. During a night navigation drill, one muttered just loud enough, "If she slows us down, I'll leave her behind." Sophia heard, but she didn't respond. Words were wasted on doubt. She let her actions speak. When that same man froze, lost under the canopy of trees, Sophia found the way forward by reading stars peeking through breaks in the branches. Quietly, she guided the team back to base. No one mentioned it aloud, but the whispers began to change. Even Rodriguez noticed. "She doesn't talk much," he said one evening, watching her clean her rifle under a dim lamp. "She doesn't need to," Chen replied. "She listens more than most of us." But the hardest moment came in the Nevada desert, a hostage rescue simulation. Sophia's team stormed a mock compound, gunfire blanks echoing in the heat. Morrison barked commands from the shadows, testing every decision. At the critical moment, Sophia had eyes on a hostile holding a hostage. The shot was possible but risky. One slip could cost the hostage's life. Her finger rested on the trigger, time slowed. She remembered her father again. Sometimes the shot you don't take is the one that matters. But this time she knew the odds. Her breath steadied, her calculation exact. She fired. The hostile dropped. The hostage lived. And in that same instant she noticed a gap in the compound's defenses, an opening the team hadn't seen. Her calm voice cut through comms. "Flank right, breach through the alley." They followed. The mission ended with 0 casualties. When the debrief came, Rodriguez leaned toward Morrison. "She's not just a shooter, she thinks like an operator." Morrison didn't reply, but for the first time, a flicker of approval crossed his face. That night, Sophia lay awake under desert stars, her body aching but her spirit steady. For the first time, she felt the weight of belonging, not handed to her, but earned. Not because she was louder or stronger, but because she was steady, precise, unwilling to break. Still, doubt lingered at the edges. Did they respect her, or were they simply surprised she hadn't failed yet? And did it matter? Maybe not. What mattered was that when the missions came, the real missions with real lives in the balance, she would be ready. Because she had learned something vital in those weeks. Strength wasn't loud. It wasn't swagger. It wasn't the kind of pride that shouted. Strength was the quiet refusal to quit. the silent resilience that endured every test, the kind of strength that doesn't argue, doesn't boast, doesn't explain. It just acts. Why did the silence of the mountains feel louder than gunfire? The air in Afghanistan was thin, sharp, and merciless. Sophia crouched low in the pre-dawn cold, frost clinging to her gloves, her breath misting in pale clouds. The jagged ridges cut against the sky like the teeth of a saw, and somewhere in the valley below, shadows moved, men who had orchestrated ambushes, who had turned villages into graves. 6 months of relentless training had led her here. 6 months of breaking, rebuilding, testing, doubting. Now the doubt was gone. Only focus remained. "Target compound, 2800 meters," whispered Corporal Hayes, her spotter. His voice was steady but low, carried only through the throat mic. He adjusted his optics, eyes narrowing as he counted figures slipping between structures. Multiple tangos moving, looks like 3 high value. Sophia's rifle rested solid against her shoulder. The Barrett MRAD was no longer just a weapon, it was part of her. Every bolt, every adjustment, every ounce of recoil was as familiar as the rhythm of her own pulse. Through the glass, the compound sharpened. Mud brick walls, faint trails of smoke, men moving with purpose but unaware that eyes watched them from half a mile of rock and silence away. Intelligence had marked this place as a meeting point for leaders coordinating attacks across the region. Coalition forces had bled because of decisions made in those walls. The mission was simple in words, impossible in execution. Eliminate the high-value targets with surgical precision. No collateral damage, no mistakes. "Wind variable 8 to 12 knots, Sophia murmured, eyes still locked on the scope. "Southwest, heat distortion increasing with sunrise." "Copy," Hayes said. He trusted her instinct more than the instruments. Everyone did, even if they didn't always admit it. Morrison's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "Sniper 1, you're green. Clean shots only. No collateral." He was hundreds of meters away with the rest of the team, in position to exfil if the mission turned sour. His tone was calm, but the weight in his words pressed heavy. Sophia exhaled slowly. She remembered the Nevada desert, the simulation, the split-second choices. Except now this wasn't simulated. These weren't silhouettes on plywood. These were men with names, faces, histories, and lives that had destroyed other lives. She found target Alpha. Broad shoulders, beard flecked with gray. The man strolled from one building to another with the ease of someone who thought himself untouchable. Through her scope, Sophia saw him laugh. A man who had buried sons and fathers with his orders was laughing in the morning sun. Her finger brushed the trigger. Then she hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. A bullet wasn't just physics. It wasn't just math. It was an ending carried across nearly 3 kilometers of open air, an ending she was responsible for. Her father's words whispered in memory, "Don't ever forget, a shot isn't about taking a life, it's about saving others." Her breath steadied, her crosshairs aligned, the world narrowed to silence. The Barrett thundered. Through her scope she saw him drop instantly, a clean fall without chaos. For a heartbeat the compound froze. Confusion rippled. Men shouted, scattering like ants under sudden light. "Target Alpha down. Clean," Hayes confirmed, voice clipped but sure. Sophia adjusted without pause. Target Bravo. Younger, moving faster. She tracked him as he darted between shadows, his form flickering in and out of cover. Her mind calculated instinctively wind, distance, movement speed, timing. She waited until his foot caught a moment in open ground. She fired. Another drop, another silence. "Bravo down," confirmed. She didn't stop. Target Charlie, the last. He sprinted, frantic, disappearing inside a small outbuilding. Sophia tightened her jaw. A wall now separated her crosshairs from the man who had orchestrated roadside bombs. "Sniper 1, hold," Morrison ordered. "We can breach if needed." Sophia breathed once steady. She watched through her scope as shadows shifted behind the thin mud wall. She didn't rush. She didn't gamble. Then a flicker. A window barely wide enough for a glimpse of his shoulder. Her finger squeezed. The shot cracked. Dust puffed from the side of the building. And then, through haze and smoke, the man collapsed. Target Charlie neutralized. No collateral. Mission complete. Hayes's tone carried more than professionalism. It carried awe. Sophia exhaled fully, the sound almost a tremor. Not relief, not pride, something deeper, something quieter. Morrison's voice came through, low but firm. Outstanding, Sniper 1, begin displacement, extraction point Alpha. The mission wasn't over until they were gone. Sophia and Hayes packed quickly, every movement methodical. The mountains gave no mercy to those who lingered. As they moved toward exfil, the adrenaline slowly bled into silence, replaced by something heavier: reflection. She thought of the men who now lay still in that compound. Thought of the families who would never know who ended their lives, only that they were gone. She thought of the soldiers who might live now because those men no longer gave orders. Her brothers would never understand this weight. Miguel with his football glory, Carlos with his engineering career. Diego, even as a Marine, might never face what she just had: the power to erase a life from a world away, the responsibility of making that choice. As they regrouped at the extraction point, Morrison met her eyes. For a brief second, his mask slipped. Pride flickered there, quiet but undeniable. He didn't offer congratulations. He didn't need to. The mission itself spoke. The helicopter blades churned dust as they lifted off, the valley shrinking below. Sophia sat in silence, her rifle across her lap. Around her, the team exchanged clipped words, checked gear, rehashed details. But she didn't join in. Her thoughts were elsewhere. She thought of her mother, who still prayed for her safety each night. She thought of her father, who would have understood the moral calculus of this mission. And she thought of the truth she was only beginning to grasp. Being a sniper wasn't about glory or respect or proving her brothers wrong. It was about silence, about carrying burdens no one else wanted to carry, about making choices no one else wanted to make. The Afghan mountains faded into the horizon, touched by the golden glow of sunrise. And Sophia Martinez, the girl once dismissed as too small, too quiet, sat steady in her seat, the echo of her perfect shots still alive in her chest. There would be more missions, more lives in her crosshairs, more choices that would define who she became. But in that moment, as the helicopter climbed into the vast sky, she knew something with absolute clarity. Strength didn't speak. It acted. Why did success feel heavier than failure? The mission had gone flawlessly, 3 targets neutralized, no collateral, clean exfil. On paper, it was the kind of operation that would earn quiet commendations in reports stamped classified. For most, that was enough. But Sophia didn't sleep that night. Back at the forward operating base, the others celebrated in their own way: jokes, cards, a rare hot meal. Sophia sat alone, methodically cleaning her Barrett MRAD. The rifle's pieces lay scattered across the table under the dim yellow light, each one polished until it reflected her face in fragments. That was how she felt: fragmented. She had done her job. She had executed with precision. But behind her eyes, the image replayed. The man laughing in the sunlight before her bullet erased him. She didn't regret it. She knew what he had orchestrated. Yet the laughter stayed with her as if she'd stolen something more than a life. Morrison found her there. He didn't sit, didn't soften his tone. "You did well." Sophia nodded, her hand steady on the cleaning rod. "Thank you, sir." He studied her for a moment as if weighing something unseen. First mission always lingers. That's normal. "Does it ever stop lingering?" she asked quietly. Morrison's pause was long, deliberate. "No, it just changes shape." And then he left. The next mission came sooner than expected. A convoy had been ambushed on a mountain pass. Intelligence identified a sniper cell responsible. dug into caves overlooking the road. Their attacks had already killed 7 soldiers in the past month. Sophia's team was tasked with neutralizing them before more convoys ran the gauntlet. The terrain was merciless. Jagged cliffs, thin air, loose rock that betrayed footsteps. Hours of climbing left the team exhausted before the mission even began. Sophia and Hayes took overwatch while Morrison's unit maneuvered into flanking positions. Through her scope she saw them, the enemy snipers camouflaged in shadows. Men like her, rifles steady, eyes fixed on the valley road where another convoy would soon pass. She studied their movements, their precision, the calm way they adjusted optics. For the first time, Sophia felt something unsettling: recognition. "They're professionals," Hayes whispered, his voice tense. "Not amateurs, look how they work in pairs." Sophia tracked one as he checked wind with a strip of cloth, the exact same way her father had taught her years ago. She could almost imagine him as herself, lying there, waiting. Her chest tightened. "What makes me different?" she wondered. "If I'd been born on another side of the world, would I be him?" Orders came through. "Sniper 1, engage." Her crosshairs locked, her finger hovered, and she hesitated. The man was just a shadow in a scope, a mirror, a possibility. She thought of his family. Did he have siblings who doubted him, a father who taught him to shoot? Was he laughing with comrades the night before, believing he was fighting for something worth dying for? Her breath caught. Hayes's voice cut in sharp. "Sophia, take the shot." She fired. The man crumpled. Through her scope, she saw the second sniper whirl in panic before Morrison's team stormed their position, ending it in seconds. The mission was successful. The convoy passed unscathed. But that night, Sophia's hands shook as she cleaned her rifle, not from fear, from the realization that the line between enemy and self had blurred. She was alive because she'd been born on one side of a border. He was dead because he'd been born on the other. Weeks turned into months. Missions blurred together, some surgical, some chaotic. Precision strikes on compounds, overwatch for raids, long nights lying in sand so cold it burned. Each time Sophia delivered. Each time her reputation grew. The quiet girl who hit the impossible shots, the one who never cracked. But inside, cracks formed. Letters from home arrived occasionally. Her mother's handwriting shaky but filled with prayers. Her brothers wrote less often, short updates, safe words, nothing of depth. None of them asked what it felt like to carry the silence of death in her scope. None of them would ever understand. One night, after a grueling mission, Rodriguez sat beside her as she tightened her rifle's sling. He watched her for a long moment before speaking. "You ever wonder if this changes us too much?" Sophia glanced at him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Killing at range, never seeing their eyes, it makes it easy, too easy." Her chest tightened. "It doesn't feel easy." Rodriguez gave her a look, one part sympathy, one part warning. "That's why you'll last. The day it feels easy, that's the day you're done." The word stayed with her. Her next mission tested them. Intelligence had flagged a meeting in a small village where insurgents planned to recruit locals. Sophia's orders were to eliminate the leaders discreetly. From her hillside perch, she spotted them gathering under a canopy. But among them were boys, no older than 15, listening, nodding, drawn in by promises of belonging. Her finger rested on the trigger. Orders were clear, but her stomach knotted. If she fired, the boys would see death rain from nowhere. Would they leave in fear or be bound forever by vengeance? She hesitated for too long. Morrison's voice cut in, calm but edged. "Sniper 1, take the shot." She forced herself to breathe. Her bullet struck true, one leader collapsing instantly. Chaos erupted, the boys scattering in terror. The mission was technically a success, but Sophia's chest burned. Not because of the kill, because of the look on one boy's face before he ran. A look she recognized. The same determination she had once carried when her brothers told her she wasn't enough. Back at base, Morrison confronted her. You hesitated again. Sophia met his gaze, because they were kids. His expression stayed stone. Our job isn't to raise them. Our job is to prevent tomorrow's attack. Every hesitation risks lives. She swallowed hard, and if the hesitation saves a life they would have taken. Morrison didn't answer. He turned and walked away. That night Sophia lay awake, staring at the tent ceiling, haunted by the boy's eyes. She wondered what choice he would make years from now, whether her bullet had saved him or condemned him. The missions kept coming, she kept delivering, each shot perfect, each exfil clean. Her legend grew quietly among those who knew. Martinez doesn't miss. She's ice under pressure, the sniper queen. But Sophia didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a ledger, each shot another line, each mission another weight. Sometimes she wrote letters to her father, even though he'd been gone for years. She never sent them. She just wrote, then folded them into her journal. Words he would have understood. I don't miss Dad, but sometimes I wish I did. Maybe missing would feel more human. And yet when dawn came, when the call came, when Morrison's voice ordered precision, Sophia never missed. Because deep down, beneath the cracks, she knew one truth. If she faltered, someone else would pay the price. And so she carried the silence, alone, always alone. How does silence sound when it's filled with regret? The mission brief was simple, almost deceptively so. A convoy of insurgent leaders was scheduled to travel along a remote dirt road in the Hindu Kush. Intelligence marked it as a rare chance to decapitate a cell responsible for months of roadside bombings. Sophia's unit would set up overwatch. She would do what she always did: calculate, breathe, fire. The mountains loomed around them as the team moved into position. Jagged ridges, valleys that swallowed sound. The air was so thin it stung in the lungs. Sophia and Hayes crawled into their perch hours before dawn, digging into the earth until they disappeared into the rocks. Her Barrett MRAD settled into place, scope trained on the serpentine road winding through the valley. Convoy expected in 2 hours, Morrison's voice crackled softly over comms. We hit the lead and tail vehicles. Contain, precision only, no collateral. Sophia breathed slowly, watching through her scope as the horizon bled from black to gray. She had done this a dozen times, but something felt different, a restlessness in her chest she couldn't name. The first trucks appeared. Dust plumes rose behind their tires, catching the pale morning light. Through her scope she saw them clearly, 3 vehicles, armed men in the beds, rifles slung casually, unaware they were being watched. She tracked faces, postures, tiny details. Calculations clicked into place. Sniper 1, you are green, Morrison ordered. Her crosshairs locked on the driver of the lead truck. She exhaled. Finger brushed the trigger. She fired. The shot cracked across the valley. The driver dropped, the vehicle swerving violently before slamming into the ditch. Gunfire erupted instantly, wild, panicked. Shouts echoed against the cliffs. Take the rear, Morrison barked. Sophia adjusted, shifted her aim to the last vehicle, found the driver's temple in her glass. Another squeeze. Another body slumped. The convoy was trapped. The ambush unfolded like clockwork. Morrison's team advanced from hidden positions, rifles spitting controlled bursts. Sophia provided overwatch, eliminating threats before they ever aimed. For minutes it seemed flawless, predictable, clean. And then movement. Her scope caught it, a figure sprinting from the middle vehicle, dragging something small. At first she thought it was gear. Then she saw the face. A boy. No more than 12, stumbling, terrified, pulled by the arm of a man shielding him with his body. Her chest froze. Target moving, north slope. Hayes shouted, his scope already locked. Sophia adjusted, tracking the man. He was armed. He was dragging the boy. Her finger found the trigger. Her breath faltered. If she fired and missed by inches, the boy would die. If she hesitated, the man might escape with him. Sniper 1, take the shot, Morrison commanded. Her heart pounded. Her father's voice whispered in memory, "Sometimes the shot you don't take matters most." But this wasn't a lesson. This was now. She exhaled, tried to still her pulse, tried to drown out the storm inside. The crosshairs jittered ever so slightly over the moving pair. Her finger trembled. For the first time in years, trembled. She squeezed. The Barrett thundered. The man fell, but so did the boy. Through her scope, Sophia saw it all, the body twisting, the boy's small frame collapsing into dust, the stillness that followed. Her stomach hollowed, a pit opening inside her that no calculation could fill. "Target neutralized," the spotter reported, his voice flat. Then, after a pause, "Collateral confirmed." The radio crackled with static. No one spoke, not even Morrison. The firefight ended minutes later, survivors captured, vehicles secured. From a tactical standpoint, the mission was a success, but success felt poisoned. When the team regrouped, no one looked at her. Hayes avoided her eyes. Rodriguez offered a half-hearted pat on her shoulder, then walked away. Even Morrison's gaze lingered only for a second before shifting elsewhere. Back at base, she sat alone again, her rifle in pieces before her. She cleaned it the same way she always did, every piece immaculate. But no matter how she polished, the boy's face stared back from the steel. Rodriguez finally broke the silence. He sat across from her, leaning back in his chair. His voice was low, careful. "It wasn't your fault. He was using the kid as cover." Her hands paused on the bolt, "But I pulled the trigger." "You had no choice." Her eyes flicked up. "There's always a choice." Later that night, Morrison came. He didn't lecture, didn't offer comfort. He simply stood by her table, his shadow falling over the weapon she couldn't stop cleaning. "You did your job." Sophia's voice cracked for the first time in months. "I killed a child." "You killed an enemy using a child," Morrison corrected, his tone clipped. "That's the difference." She shook her head slowly. "Feels the same." He studied her, his expression unreadable. "If you can't live with it, you won't last. But if you can't feel it, you don't deserve this rifle. Find the balance, Martinez, or it'll destroy you." And then he walked away, leaving her with nothing but silence. Sleep didn't come. She lay in her bunk staring at the canvas ceiling, every blink replaying the boy's fall. She thought of his mother, wherever she was, waiting for him to come home. She thought of her own mother, still writing prayers into letters. She thought of the thin line between justification and guilt. She whispered into the darkness, as if to her father's memory, "I didn't miss Dad, but I wish I had." The next day she went back to the range. Alone as always, the sun beat down, the heat shimmering across steel targets. She set up at impossible distances, firing again and again. Each round a plea, each shot a punishment. She didn't miss. She couldn't. Missing would mean letting the guilt win. But no matter how perfect the grouping, nothing erased the image of a boy collapsing in dust. The legend of the Sniper Queen grew in whispers. The woman who hit 3,000 meters, the one who never cracked, but legends never told the whole story. They didn't mention the nights she woke gasping, the way she scrubbed her rifle until her hands bled, the silence she carried like a coffin inside her chest. For the first time, Sophia understood what Morrison meant. The shot lingers, always. And this one would never leave her. How do you steady your hands when your heart refuses to be still? The boy's face lingered in every shadow. Sophia carried it with her from bunk to chow hall, from firing range to mission brief. She didn't talk about it. No one did. But silence wasn't absence, it was weight. And the weight grew heavier each day. She punished herself with precision. Extra hours on the range. Endless drills. Targets shattered at distances others couldn't dream of. Her shots remained flawless, but each pull of the trigger felt colder, emptier. The rifle had once been her sanctuary. Now it felt like judgment in her hands. Letters from home came sporadically. Her mother wrote of prayers and hope. Miguel bragged about coaching a high school football team. Carlos described the latest project at his engineering firm. Diego wrote simply, "Stay sharp, stay alive." None of them asked about the silence she lived with. None of them would understand. The break in routine came one evening when Morrison called the team into the briefing room. The air was tense before he even spoke. His eyes moved across them, steady, sharp, carrying the weight of something more than routine. "We've got a target," he began. "High value, orchestrator of multiple bombings. He's meeting with foreign financiers tomorrow night in the northern city. If he leaves that meeting alive, he'll fund operations that could destabilize this entire sector for months. Our job is to stop him. Clean. Surgical." He tapped the map, a crowded district, rooftops stacked like uneven teeth, markets, civilians everywhere. "This is not a long-range mission. Too many variables, too many innocents. We'll infiltrate. Martinez, you're our anchor. Rooftop overwatch. Your calls will determine if we live or die." Her chest tightened. This wasn't the quiet vastness of mountains or valleys. This was a maze of humanity, sound, chaos. Every trigger pull here carried the risk of another child, another face. She didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to her own breathing. She thought of the boy again, the one who fell because of her bullet. She tried to tell herself this was different, that the mission's importance outweighed fear. But fear wasn't the problem. Guilt was. By dusk the next evening they moved through the city in shadows. Narrow alleys, crumbling walls, the smell of spice, sweat, and smoke clinging to the air. Sophia climbed with haze to a rooftop overlooking the meeting site. The market below pulsed with life. Stalls crowded with goods. Children darting between legs. Voices rose in bargaining, laughter, arguments. And somewhere amid the noise, the target. Through her scope she scanned faces. Traders, buyers, guards blending into the crowd. Her heart pounded. Every figure looked like a potential threat. Every child reminded her of the boy. "Target entering," Hayes murmured, glassing the scene with his spotting scope. Sophia found him. Tall, clean-shaven, his robe pressed crisp. He moved with the arrogance of someone untouchable, flanked by armed men. He shook hands with foreigners at a stall disguised as merchants. "Visual confirmed," Sophia whispered. Her finger brushed the trigger, but Morrison's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Negative, not yet. Too many civilians. Wait for my mark." She exhaled. "Wait, watch." Her scope tracked the man's every movement. Minutes passed like hours. The market bustled, the target laughing, gesturing, pointing at crates that surely hid more than fruit. Every second he remained alive, plans solidified. Every second Sophia's muscles ached with the need to act. Then a ripple. A guard's hand twitched toward his rifle, scanning the crowd too sharply. Sophia followed his line of sight and froze. Another boy, running between stalls, no older than the one she had killed. Innocent, oblivious, but directly in line with her scope. Her breath caught, her vision blurred with memory. "Sniper 1 status," Morrison's voice pressed in her ear. She swallowed, target clear but civilians close. "Hold, we move on my command." The boy lingered at a stall, tugging at his mother's sleeve. Sophia's chest burned. She forced her breath steady, forced her hands still. She couldn't let her mind fracture now. Not here, not with her team's lives hanging in the balance. Then the moment shifted. One of the financiers handed the target a briefcase. The deal was happening. The window was seconds long. "Martinez, green light, take him." Her finger settled on the trigger. Her breath paused. The boy's laughter drifted faintly through the night air. And for an instant she thought she couldn't do it, that the memory of dust and blood would freeze her forever. But then she remembered Rodriguez's words. "The day it feels easy is the day you're done." This wasn't easy. It never would be. But hesitation meant failure. And failure here meant bombs detonating, convoys ambushed, more boys turned into soldiers. Her heart broke into silence. The shot cracked. The target dropped instantly, the briefcase tumbling from his hand. Chaos erupted in the market. Guards screamed, civilians scattered. Hayes fed her directions, left flank, rooftop, 3 guards moving. She pivoted, firing again and again, each shot controlled, surgical, precise. She cleared the way for Morrison's team as they stormed in, seizing the case, exfiltrating under the chaos. By the time the dust settled, the target was dead, the financiers captured, the case secured, and no civilians had fallen. On the rooftop, Sophia's hands shook, not from failure this time, but from release. She had held, she had not let guilt paralyze her. Back at base, Morrison approached her, expression unreadable as always. "You almost froze." Sophia met his gaze, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't." His lips pressed into the faintest hint of a smile. "No, you didn't." That night she didn't scrub her rifle into bleeding steel. She sat with it quietly, her reflection in the polished barrel no longer fragmented but whole. The boy's memory was still there. It always would be. But for the first time she understood. It wasn't a chain. It was a compass. A reminder of the cost. The sniper's burden wasn't about never missing. It was about never forgetting. What does it mean to be remembered? Not for words, but for silence. Months had passed since the market. The boy's face still haunted her dreams, but it no longer broke her. It had become something different. A weight, yes, but also a guide. She had learned to carry it. And now Sophia Martinez, the sniper they called the Queen, faced her final trial. The briefing was short, quiet, the kind reserved for operations so classified they would never see paper. Intelligence had pinpointed a meeting of multiple insurgent commanders deep in hostile territory, far beyond the reach of conventional forces. A strike team would infiltrate, but success hinged on a single element, the opening shot. One chance, one trigger pull, one silence that would decide whether dozens of soldiers lived or died. Morrison's eyes found her across the dimly lit room. He didn't need to say her name. She already knew. The night was cold when the helicopters dropped them miles from the target zone. They hiked in silence, packs heavy, breath steaming in the thin mountain air. The world felt suspended, as if even nature was holding its breath. By dawn, they reached the overlook. The compound lay below, perched against a cliffside, guards packing, rifles slung carelessly. Inside those walls, the commanders gathered. Sophia lay prone, her Barrett MRAD resting solid in her hands. Hayes adjusted his spotting scope beside her, his voice low. Range 3,100. Crosswind steady at 14 knots south by southwest. Elevation extreme. This is beyond. Sophia didn't answer. She already knew. 3,000 meters was her legend. 3,100 was her test. Through her scope, the world narrowed to glass and breath. The compound seemed impossibly small, figures moving like shadows on a distant stage. She tracked them, faces marked by intelligence as architects of ambushes, bombings, massacres, men who believed they were untouchable. Her chest rose and fell slowly, every inhale a calculation, every exhale a prayer. Morrison's voice came through her earpiece, steady but heavy. "Martinez, this is yours. If you miss, we abort. Too much risk. Too many lives, make it count." She remembered her father's words. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She remembered Rodriguez. The day it feels easy is the day you're done. She remembered the boy, not as guilt but as compass. Never forget what the cost feels like. Her crosshairs settled on the target, the commander at the table, gesturing with his hands, laughing as if he ruled the mountains themselves. She adjusted for wind, for elevation, for the thin air. She calculated bullet drop, drift, humidity, even the Earth's slow spin beneath them. The math was impossible, and yet she trusted it, trusted herself. Her breath slowed, the world stilled. She squeezed. The Barrett roared, the sound rolling across the valley like thunder. Time fractured. Seconds stretched into eternity as the bullet carved its invisible arc through wind, air, gravity. 4 seconds, then 5. And then impact. Through her scope, she saw the man's body jerk, collapse across the table. Silence followed, heavy and absolute. Then chaos erupted inside the compound, guards scrambling, shouts echoing, confusion spreading like wildfire. Hayes's voice cracked in awe. Direct hit, Martinez dead center. Sophia didn't smile, she didn't speak. She simply adjusted, chambered another round, scanning for threats. Her job wasn't finished. Morrison's voice came, clipped but steady. Go, move, team entering, Martinez, cover them. The firefight below was brief but violent. Morrison's unit stormed the compound, cutting through disoriented guards. Sophia's rifle spoke again and again, precise, surgical, eliminating threats before they could aim. Every shot perfect, every breath measured. Minutes later it was over. The commanders were dead, intelligence seized, the compound burned. Extraction now, Morrison ordered. They moved through the mountains under fatting gunfire, the sun bleeding into the horizon. By the time the helicopters lifted them out, the valley was just smoke and silence. Back at base, the team gathered in the debriefing room. Dust streaked their faces, exhaustion etched in every line. Morrison stood at the front, his voice low. Mission successful, objectives complete, 0 casualties. His eyes lingered on Sophia. For the first time since she'd met him, his mask cracked fully. His voice carried something rare, admiration without restraint. Martinez, you've done what few in history ever will. Not just the shot, not just today, but all of it. You've carried the silence and you've never let it break you. The room was quiet. No applause, no cheers, just silence, the kind that meant respect. Later, alone in her bunk, Sophia sat with her rifle across her lap. She didn't clean it this time. She just held it, her reflection dim in the steel. She thought of her family back in Texas, still unaware of the things she had done in shadows. She thought of her father, whose lessons had carried her further than either of them had ever imagined. And she thought of dignity, how it wasn't about medals or recognition. It wasn't about proving her brothers wrong or silencing doubters. Dignity was quieter than that. It was doing the impossible, bearing the unbearable, and never needing to say a word about it. She lay back, eyes heavy, the hum of distant generators filling the silence. For the first time in months she felt peace, not because the weight was gone, but because she had learned how to carry it. And in that quiet, final thought drifted through her mind, soft as a prayer. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.